Hi, Chillins. Mr. Bruce here. Today's book, Library Lion. But first, eyes watching, ears listening, voices quiet, body calm. Okay, here we go. One day, a lion came up to the library. He walked right past the circulation desk and walked right up into the stacks where they kept all the books. Mr. McBee ran down the hall. "Miss Merriweather," he called. "No running," said Miss Merriweather without looking up. "But there's a lion in the library," said Mr. McBee. "Is he breaking any rules?" asked Miss Merriweather. She was very particular about rule breaking. "Well, no, not really," she said. "Well, then leave him be." The lion wandered around the library, sniffed the card catalog, rubbed his head up against the new book collection. He padded over to the story corner and went to sleep. No one was sure what to do. There weren't any rules when a lion got into the library. Soon it was time for story hours. There weren't any rules about lion at story hour either. The story lady seemed a little nervous, but she read the first book's title in good, clear voice. Then the lion looked up. The lady kept reading. The lion stayed for the next story and a story after that and waited for another story. But the children began to walk away. "Story hour is over," the little girl told him. "It's time to go." The lion looked at the children. He looked at the story lady. He looked at the closed books, and then he roared very loud. Roar! Miss Merriweather came walking out of the office. "What's this noise?" "It's the lion," said Mr. McBee. Miss Merriweather marched over to the lion. "If you cannot be quiet, you'll have to leave. Those are the rules." The lion kept roaring. He sounded sad. A little girl tugged on Miss Merriweather's dress and said, "If he promises to be quiet, can he come back for story hour tomorrow?" The lion stopped roaring and looked at Miss Merriweather. Then she said, "Yes, a nice quiet lion would certainly be allowed to come back for story hour." "Hooray!" said the children, and they all cheered. Look, he looked sad. He made too much noise. The next day, the lion came back. "You're early," said Miss Merriweather. "Story hour's not till 3 o'clock." The lion did not budge. "Very, very well," said Mrs. Merriweather. "You might as well make yourself useful." And she sent him downstairs to dust the encyclopedias until it was time for story hours. Encyclopedias are big books. The next day, the lion came early again, and this time Miss Merriweather asked him to lick all the envelopes for the overdue notices. He was the envelope licker. Soon, the lion began doing things without being asked. He dusted the encyclopedia. He licked the envelopes. He let small children stand on his back to reach the books at the highest shelves. When he curled up in the story corner and waited for the story hour to begin, every day it was his favorite time. At first, people in the library were nervous about the lion, but soon they got used to having him around. In fact, he seemed very well suited for the library. His big feet were quiet on the library floor, and he made a comfy backrest for the children at story hour. He never roared in the library anymore. "What a helpful lion," people said. They patted his soft head as he walked by. How did he ever get along without him? Mr. McBee scowled when he heard that. He had always gotten along fine before. No lions were needed. Lions, he thought, did not understand the rules. They didn't belong in the library. He was not a happy buckaroo. He didn't like lions in his library. One day, after he had dusted all the encyclopedias and licked the envelopes, helped the small children, the lion went down to Miss Merriweather's office to see what else there was to do. There was still some time left before story hour. "Hello, lion," said Miss Merriweather. "I know something you can do. You can bring a book back into the stacks for me. Let me just get it down from the shelf." Miss Merriweather stepped up onto the step stool. The book was just out of reach. She stood on her toes and reached almost there. And then Miss Merriweather stretched a little too far. No, Miss Merriweather. Softly, she did not get up. Mr. McBee, she called, but Mr. McBee was out at the circulation desk. He couldn't hear her calling. Lion, she said, please go and get Mr. McBee. He ran down the hall, and when he ran down the hall, you know what Miss McBee said? No running! The lion put his big front paws up on the circulation disc and looked at Mr. McBee. Go away, Lion, said McBee. I'm busy. The lion whined. He pointed his nose down the hall towards Miss Merriweather's office, but Mr. McBee didn't know what he meant. He ignored him. Finally, the lion did the only thing he could think of. He looked at Mr. McBee right in the eye. Then he opened his mouth very wide, and he roared the loudest roar he ever roared in his life. Roar! Follow me! Oh, Mr. McBee was startled. You're not being quiet, he said. You're breaking the rules. McBee walked down the hall as fast as he could. The lion did not follow him. He had broken the rules, and he knew what that meant. He hung his head and walked towards the door. Mr. McBee did not notice Mrs. Merriweather, and he called out, Mrs. Merriweather, the lion broke the rules. The lion broke the rules. He was a tattletale. He burst into Miss Merriweather's office. She was not in her chair. Miss Merriweather, he asked. Sometimes, said Miss Merriweather from behind the desk, there is a good reason to break the rules, even in the library. Now, please, go call a doctor. I think I've broken my arm. McBee ran to call a doctor. You know what Mrs. McBee said? No running in the library. She sure does like to keep the rules, doesn't she? The next day, things were back to normal almost. Mrs. Merriweather's arm was in a cast, and the doctor told her not to work too hard. I will have my lion to help me, Miss Merriweather thought, but the lion did not come to the library that morning. At 3 o'clock, Miss Merriweather walked over to the story corner, and the story lady was just beginning a story for the children, and yet the lion wasn't there yet. People in the library kept looking up from their books and computer screens, hoping they'd see a familiar furry face, but the lion did not come that day. The lion did not come the next day. The lion did not come the next day. One evening, Mr. McBee stopped by Miss Merriweather's office on his way out. Can I get you anything before I go, Miss Merriweather? He asked. No, thank you, said Miss Merriweather. She was looking out the window. Her voice was very quiet. Mr. McBee frowned as he walked away. He thought there was probably something he could do for Miss Merriweather after all. I wonder what that is. Mr. McBee left the library. Down the stairs he went, but he did not go right home. He walked around the neighborhood. He looked under cars, behind bushes. He looked in backyards and in trash cans and behind tree houses. Finally, he circled all the way back to the library, and the lion was sitting outside the library, looking through the glass doors. Hello, Lion, said McBee. The lion did not turn around. I thought you might like to know, said Mr. McBee, that there's a new rule at the library. No roaring aloud unless you have a very good reason. Say if you're trying to help a friend who's been hurt. The lion's ears twitched and he turned around. But Mr. McBee was already walking away. He let him know he was welcome back there. The next day, McBee walked down the hall to Miss Merriweather's office. What is it, Mr. McBee? Asked Miss Merriweather in her new, quiet, sad voice. I thought you might like to know, said McBee, that there's a lion in the library. Miss Merriweather jumped up from her chair and ran down the hall. Mr. McBee said, no running! Miss Merriweather did not listen. Sometimes there was a good reason to break rules, even in the library. The end. Well, he looks like he liked to read. He was a good library lion. What kind of animal would you like to see to come to school and sit with you and talk to your teacher? Can you think of one? Okay. Before I go, I want to say today, happy birthday to Amelia and Alexa. It's a double birthday. Have a great time. Until tomorrow, be good to your folks and wash your hands. Bye-bye.